Welcome, everyone. My name is Mike Imhen. I'm excited to have you here. Our special guest's name is Naomi Shihab Nye. She's a poet, songwriter, and author, novelist. She is the author of numerous books of poems, including Castaway, Poems for Our Time, The Tiny Journalist, Voices in the Air, Poems for Listeners, Transfer, You and Yours, which received the Isabella Gardner Poetry Award, and 19 Varieties of Gazelle, Poems of the Middle East, a collection of new and select poems about the Middle East. She is also the author of several books of poetry and fiction for children, including Habibi, for which she received the Jane Addams Children's Book Award in 1998. Naomi's honors include awards from the International Poetry Forum and the Texas Institute of Letters, the Charity Randall Prize, the National Book Critics Circle Lifetime Achievement Award, and 4 Pushcart Prizes. She has been a Lannan Fellow, a Guggenheim Fellow, and a Witter Bynner Fellow. In 1998, she received the Academy of American Poets Lavin Award, judged by W.S. Mervyn. Naomi served as a chancellor of the Academy of American Poets from 2010 to 2015, and is the Poetry Foundation's Young People's Poet Laureate from 2019 to 2022. Naomi, welcome to Affective Conversations.
Thank you so much, Mikey. I'm thrilled to be here with you all. And thanks to everybody checking in from so many wonderful places. That feels good.
Yeah, it is nice. You have fans all over the world. I guess a good place to start, I like to start with questions about your childhood and stuff like that. But maybe a good place to start is, how does it feel having all these sort of receiving these types of awards as a poet and having them sort of reread back to you? It must feel kind of weird, but kind of nice. How does it feel?
Well, it does feel very touching and very encouraging. But of course, when you're a poet or any kind of writer, you don't do anything that you do with an award as your intention. It's not something that's ever in your own mind, I don't think. So it's just like an unexpected gift, and you feel so touched that someone liked your work at any given moment and was so encouraging to you.
Yeah. Do you write with the readers in mind? Do you think about them being read by people? Is there a sort of an image of in your mind's eye as you're writing?
Well, sometimes I do, but not always, because sometimes I just am writing in a notebook, just writing down every day little things, and I'm not really thinking of readers then. But when I start typing or putting something together, looking at it from a slightly farther distance, then I think about readers, and I really care about readers. I love readers, and being a reader all my life, I know what it feels like to read text and feel the text kind of wrap around you. We're all talking about being chilly in the world today. It's so cold in so many places, but I always felt that reading was such a warm experience that helped us feel at home in the world.
Yeah. So most bios, if anyone looks up your bio, most bios about you start with the phrase that Naomi's a Palestinian American. Your father's Palestinian. And I'm curious about what your relationship was like with him as a kid. He was a journalist. He cared a lot about the written word. How early on into your childhood did you feel comfortable with the idea that, oh, I'm a writer? This is who I am.
Right. Well, I adored my father. He was just such a jovial, convivial, curious person. He would have loved this organization, by the way. What you talk about, active intellectual curiosity, that was him all the way. He was a heartwarming, funny dad, never fussy, never angry, just so loving to everybody. And people have so many good memories of him that I'm constantly being reminded of how much he meant to anyone who came in contact with him. I was, of course, intrigued by the fact that he was a journalist, and there were always newspapers, many of them, in our house, and magazines and books. He was a big reader, both in Arabic and in English, and always encouraged, asking more questions. We need to know more stories. We need to find out that story. I mean, he would actually stop the car on the street to ask someone on the corner their story. And that sense of camaraderie, closeness in the world was a lucky thing for me as a child. I just felt his magic from the very beginning. By the way, the picture on the left is 53. The one on the right is probably more like 1958 or 59.
Yeah.
And it was in one of those 25-cent booths that we used to have in drugstores in the United States, where you put a quarter and get a picture. But it's touching to me that he's pointing at me in that picture, because I think he was that kind of person. He always made kids feel like their voice mattered. What do you think about this? He would ask my friends, and that meant something big to me. I did not grow up speaking Arabic, though, which is something I deeply regret and will always regret. He said later, "I'm sorry, I was trying to perfect my English," because at that point he was working in English as a journalist. And he said, I should have taught you Arabic. I don't know why I didn't. It was something he regretted too.
Yeah. So both of these photos are taken in the US and Texas, right?
No, these were both taken in St. Louis.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, Missouri.
We didn't come to Texas till later.
So let's talk about that later. So in 1966, you moved to Palestine.
Yes.
And the idea is your dad, I think if I have the story straight, your dad's mom is sick. And maybe I'm wrong. Well, but there's some reason why you moved back. What is that reason?
Well, when my parents married, I think they had an understanding that they wanted to live in both their worlds. And my father was always hoping to go back to Palestine for good, like to stay. He really wanted to live in Palestine. He would have been very happy to stay there longer. But when we went in 66, I think he thought it was going to be a peaceful time. Things were all going to be getting better. So we lived actually just south of Ramallah, between Jerusalem and Ramallah. But I remember this roundabout very clearly, and going to school first in Ramallah, then I went in the old city of Jerusalem, and my brother stayed going to school in Ramallah. We were kind of in and out all the time. Now, my grandmother wasn't sick yet, but in years to come, when we would be going back and forth to Palestine so many times, and she lived to be 106.
Wow.
many times illness was involved. We figured out at some point that if the report came that she was feeling very ill, she knew that we might get on an airplane and come. So we all did that a lot. There was a lot of going back and forth.
Yeah, very, very smart.
She was.
I'm curious what your relationship was like with Palestine before moving there as a kid, and what was sort of the reattachment and maybe detachment feel like, and what did you think home was as a kid?
Well, that is a really interesting question, because I think my father gave us so much to look at in our minds through his stories. He told us stories every night before bed that were always based in Palestine. I don't think he ever told a story based in St. Louis or anywhere else he'd ever been. So I had this whole catalog of images in my mind of what Palestine was like. And then, when we actually went to live there, many of them were pretty accurate, because he was a great storyteller. And a lot of them were far-fetched and funny and more from an older world than what was existing even in the 60s. But my father was also a person always trying to feel at home wherever he was. So there was a sense of, this doesn't look like what I remember. This doesn't taste like what I remember, but this is our home. And he was somebody who wanted to revel in, making a home wherever he went. I used to feel, in all my many years as a traveling poet, which would still be going on if we didn't have COVID in the world, that that you could really make a home like in a hotel room in about an hour. You could, set up your space and go out and take a walk and get a little food and come look out the window and write things down. And, all these really basic essential activities that could make you feel suddenly at home in Seattle or Oman or wherever you found yourself at the moment. And my father probably transmitted that, that we are portable human beings. We should get to know many places in our lives if we're lucky. But for him, Palestine remained the home that he always felt closest to in his spirit.
That sort of philosophy requires like a deep interior life, right? This idea that home is actually inside of me, and all I need is a little, a different throw blanket, a nice meal, a hot shower, and all of a sudden I've my bearings have been readjusted, and I've found home, because home is sort of on the go, you being this wandering poet. So I'm curious, as a kid, what was your relationship with literature as a kid? Was it something that you disappeared into? And what were you like as a kid? Were you this quiet kid? And I'm going to pull up two of these books that you've mentioned as being some of your favorite books as a kid, just as we talk about this conversation.
Yes. Well, I was an obsessive reader, and these two books still exist in my little house. They're upstairs in the children's library area. And they were two of my favorite books. Margaret Wise Brown was an author that millions of kids worldwide have come to love, but this was not her best known book, but it was a book that was interesting to me because it focused on details in the world, which is sort of the specialty of poets, like an apple or a butterfly or a glass of water. And it said what was important about them. And I used to argue in my mind with this book and say, no, I think all these things are important, not just that one thing is the most important. And so for me, it was an important book in a different way because I had a relationship with it. I felt I was in conversation with Margaret somehow when I would look at this book. And Favorite Poems, Old and New, which is a very thick book. And I think last I looked, it was still in print too. It's an incredible book. It's been in print like 75 years now. This book that was edited by Helen Ferris, who was so modest, she didn't even put her name on the cover. This book just shared so many different voices that it was fascinating to me because I saw all these different styles of poetry, and most of the poets were from English-speaking countries. So I wondered about that. I mean, there were a few like Rabindranath Tagore from Bengal, but most of the poets were, US, England, UK.
Is Helen Ferris an Arab? That sounds like such an Arab name.
It does sound like an Arab name. And, I've looked her up before. She was the president of the Junior Library Guild at one time, but I don't know. What a great question. Now I'm going to go search that out. Mikey, I bet you'll figure it out before I do, but that is a good point. She could have been an Arab. But these books, they expanded my view, my horizon. And so once I found out about library cards and my school library, I felt like I was rich, very rich, because to me, books were what made people rich. And so I was going to the library every day at school, every Saturday in the community, and it was the center of my world. And I've always been an obsessive reader.
Okay, so
my parents.
I want to talk a little bit about your poems, but before I do, I was mentioning that I don't like asking people to do readings. So we have the luxury of having a video, an animated video done by the On Being Project, which if you don't know the On Being Project, please become familiar with them. They're incredible. And there's this animated version of Kindness, which is one of my favorite poems of yours. I imagine many people on this call also love this poem. So I'm going to play it now, and then we'll talk about it.
Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment, like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go, so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride, thinking the bus will never stop. The passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you, how he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to gaze at bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is I you have been looking for," and then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend.
Beautiful. As a musician and songwriter, how does it feel to have music set? How does it feel to have your poem scored?
I've always loved it. I mean, if anyone wants to take the time to do it, feel free to do it. I love it. All different styles of music can fit with the same poem. It's been a beautiful thing to witness. Yeah. And I think that's happened a lot more in recent years than maybe when I was growing up. So it's a pleasure to get to participate in experiencing other people's poems with music too.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, what is your relationship with your work once it goes out there? Because the idea that somebody scores it means that they have to filter the emotions and the sort of meaning through their understanding. Do you feel like you own your work? You have a monopoly on what they mean once they're done?
Oh no, I feel like it goes on and has its own life. I feel like work travels out and it has its own life, and many times its life will be better than what you possibly could have dreamed for it, and it'll make more friends in different ways than you ever could have imagined. So no, I don't feel I own anything. I feel everything just travels out into the world, and if it finds friends, I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. So this is gonna seem like a strange question, but do you ever not like your work later as it transforms? Do you? if they are truly free and they're not tethered to you, in theory, they could become different people that you don't quite like. As you become a different person, do you ever dislike poems that you've written and say, "I really don't like this person"?
No, Mikey, I never have. No one's ever asked me that question either. And you are so creative yourself that I really appreciate not only the homework you did to put our conversation together today, but asking such an interesting question. I just had occasion in the month of December to make 5 audiobooks back to back,
Wow.
reading my own poems. And it was astonishing to me to read some of those older poems, because I felt like, wow, I was really kind of seeing into the future when I wrote that. I didn't even know things that would happen. And now I have a connection to this poem that's different and bigger than what I was thinking when I wrote it. Or when I wrote it, I was only imagining it, but now I know it's really true. Just like in the kindness poem, I think the size of the cloth, how that has come to mean something different during the pandemic. The worldwide global pandemic, this cloth that has the threads that have been connecting us all worldwide. Nobody owns it. Nobody wants to own it. We just want to solve it. And but no, I didn't feel like I disliked any of the poems as I read them. Some of them seemed curious to me, like odd, and I was surprised to encounter them again. But it was a comforting thing to do. It was sort of like that thing you used to hear of your life passing before your eyes. I got a little anxious. I thought, I hope this doesn't mean I'm, passing.
Yeah.
But it was touching to read that many poems out loud, just into a microphone in a room by yourself.
What advice do you give to young poets? I mean, it seems like you're able to be so compassionate towards not only yourself today and maybe yourself tomorrow, but even your younger self. It seems like you are able to exude a degree of compassion that is forgiving and allows yourself to make the mistakes that you need. What advice would you give a young poet who's interested in having a similar level of compassion?
Well, over the years, I have kind of hopefully distilled it down to three things. That one is to read as much as you can. A young poet has a whole huge world out there to discover. And so find things that you love. And that's kind of your job, to find things you love. It's not up to your teacher. It's not up to the internet. You have to do a little sleuth work. You have to go to libraries when you feel safe doing it, and be with lots of books to find voices that really matter to you. Then get in a regular practice of writing. And for every person, that might be different. You might write for only 5 minutes a day. Well, that's better than 0 minutes. Or you might write for an hour almost every day. You find some practice, some ritual with writing where when you go to it, you feel like, oh, I'm back again. I right now have this really thick notebook that actually has the word "write" on the cover. And I'm right at the end. I'm going to miss this fat notebook. I've really enjoyed writing in it. And then find a way to share your work. If you're sharing it with 5 best friends who also love to write. These days, a lot of kids like to share on the internet. If you're sharing it with print magazines, however you're sharing it, find a way to share it, because then I think you get to have a larger life with it. It's more expansive. It's more interactive.
It's generous.
More alive. Yeah, it's more alive for you. So those are very simple things. And none of them really cost money either. I mean, you could find ways to do all those things, even if you were just a poor kid, as I was. I didn't have a lot of money growing up. I didn't need a lot of money. I didn't go to a writing program, an official writing program. I was just always writing.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about your relationship to the writers that you love. I love that idea of like, find what you love. In Africa, we always talk about like, become a fan of things, like actually start nerding out. But yes, you run this risk of kind of losing yourself in that moment and making yourself maybe in other people's images, and how what is your relationship with the writers that you love? Do you see their DNA in your writing constantly?
Well, I feel their power and their presence in my soul, in my heart. I don't necessarily see echoes of their work in my work, but I may see echoes of things I feel they taught me. I mean, I really feel I learned so much from William Stafford and W.S. Merwin, William Merwin, 2 of my favorite writers. I was listening to Mahmoud Darwish poems from when I was a teenager. My father would translate them out of Arabic to me in those days. And now, of course, there are so many translations of Darwish. I can read him, for myself. So many women. Fedwa Tukan of Palestine was someone I actually got to meet in my life in the West Bank. I loved her poems. I loved talking to her. She was an incredible icon of a human. So many writers worldwide have touched me. The writer Lucille Clifton in the United States was somebody who had a great power over me because of her honesty, her voice. I could name hundreds of poets who have affected me. And I think that, echoes of their own honesty and their own discovery process through their own body of experience, whatever it might be, I think we carry those, and we might see that in our work. Like Lucille Clifton wrote about her father in series of poems and, questioning things. And William Stafford often wrote about the land and the mystery of being alive, and not wanting to be too didactic in life, not wanting to say, this is the right way, this is what everybody should think. No, we should think, though. We should really think.
Yeah.
And so I feel that spirit of his coming through my poems sometimes, because I so responded to it when I first read him as a 17-year-old, and by that time was living in Texas. And his poems were in our English textbook in high school. Thank goodness, because he would become a mentor for my whole life.
Yeah. So I want to talk to you a little bit about your relationship to Palestine and to the Middle East now, more broadly, and how you think your poetry is received in Palestine and in the region. You've traveled a ton. We were talking about you going to Sharjah at the beginning of the call. So I'm curious, what has that reception been like, and has it surprised you in any specific way or delighted you in other ways?
Well, of course, once again, I always wish I spoke Arabic, but I understand a lot of Arabic, and I can say words in Arabic and understand certain things, but I always feel at home in the Middle East. And Mikey, I miss it every day, especially in January. I don't know why. For some reason, for many years, I would go to somewhere in the Middle East in January and work in schools and meet people. It would be impossible for me to say really how my work is received in Palestine, but I just have wanted to speak up for Palestine all my life, and for the incredibly beautiful, long-suffering Palestinian people, and the true story of all they go through in their lives. I just have felt as an American citizen, this needs to be heard more. And so I talk about Palestine wherever I am in the world. I talk about Palestine in China and Japan. And actually, once I was taken to the best Palestinian restaurant I'll ever eat at in China. And that was really terrific. It was so amazing. But, we talk about the places we love and the things we're obsessed with, but hopefully in a way that invites other people to participate in them. And when I get letters from kids in Canada, for example, I've worked in Canada many times, and the kids in Canada say, we're never going to look at the Middle East the same way the news presents it again after reading your books. That makes me so happy, because I feel like, I'm doing my job to tell stories the way my father told stories a little bit, if I can, change the way somebody looks at Palestine or the Middle East. But I love being there. I grieve for all of the hardships of too many lives there. I'm very excited about the poetry of Mossab Abu Toha of Gaza. His first book is getting ready to come out from City Lights Press in the United States, one of my favorite presses. Although I've never published anything with them, I love them. And so I'm going to be cheering for him in his book all the way. I'm always curious about other Arab writers, but I want to share voices. I've felt that was part of my job, because I had access to classrooms, and in these days to virtual Zooms. It was important to me to share voices and help kids realize there were people they really wanted to know in other countries. And one question kids in the Middle East have often asked me is, do kids in the United States know how much we would like to be their friends? And I always say, well, I don't know. I can't really tell you what all the kids in the United States feel, but I'm going to pass that word on wherever I go and say that you would like to be their friends. There's a book of mine from England, and a cover by a Palestinian artist. So I'm grateful for that. Yeah.
I want to ask you a little bit about if there have been any projects or poems or novels that have been really hard for you to write.
Hard to write. Wait, I was trying to type Mossab's name because someone asked.
Yeah.
But it's Mossab. There it is. Sorry. Well, I never thought, when you're a poet, a poem is short. And I also wrote essays starting when I was a teenager, little essays. and little short stories too. But I never thought I could write something as long as Habibi or The Turtle of Oman, because that's a novel length. Even though it's a novel for kids, it still has to have a little plot line. You know, you have to carry things through. And so it's a different kind of attention. And as I know there are many people in the world who write many kinds of things, but for me as a poet, it was hard to believe that I could maintain a thread of a story longer than, you know, just a few pages. So I have a really great editor named Virginia Duncan. She's the editor I've worked with for more than 30 years, and I've done all of my novels with her help and assistance and encouragement. And Virginia believed in the beginning that I could do it. I didn't really believe I could do it. And also kids kind of pushed me forward, because I was trying to urge them to try things that they had never tried before with their own writing. And they said, well, you should too. You should try to do a novel. And so I appreciate being pushed. And I think, you know, I'm always telling kids, try something that you don't feel that comfortable with. You know, write a really tiny poem, write a really long poem, like a Walt Whitman long poem with long lines, reshape a poem, scatter a poem across the page, see what it looks like. The great American poet Lawrence Ferlinghetti recently died. He was 101, I think. And he was a founder of City Lights Press. So it makes sense to mention him right now.
Yeah.
But I admired his work so much from my teenage years. And I looked at how observant he was and how he believed all of us should work on our observation skills, pay closer attention when you're out in the streets, really look at what's around you. Don't just look at the place you're going, but look at who else is out there? Where are they going? Think about how much we have in the world around us. And, you know, I think that that is something that kids are often hungry for. You know, that sense of, we want wider experience.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been hard with the pandemic because so many kids have been more stuck in place, just as adults have been. And so reading takes on a new, more crucial meaning.
Yeah. Okay, before I move away from the novels, I want to ask one last question, then I want to ask about Castaway. Are the novels, the process of writing the novel, you talked a little bit about the technical challenge and sort of like the endurance challenge maybe of putting together this complicated thing, but have there been any sort of piece of work, whether essay, poem, or a novel, that has been difficult from a courage standpoint? From, I don't know if I can say this. For myself, I don't know if I could say this out loud.
Yeah. I don't think so, because I want to say the things that are in these books. I really want to. And I want to speak up for Palestine and Habibi, for example. But, you know, Habibi was translated into Hebrew in Israel, by the way, but not into Arabic, because I think Palestinian kids have read it if they wanted to read it in English. So, you know,
somebody get on that. Somebody translate this.
Yeah, somebody translate this book into Arabic, please. But you know, I don't think so. And I think my father was a good model in, you know, you put your voice out there and you say what you need to say. And he was always urging kids to write letters to the editor. When I was a kid, he would say, you know, get your voice out there and say things that you really feel strongly about. And I remember other kids saying to him, but who wants to hear from us? We're kids. And he said, everybody should want to hear from you, because you're fresh and you have hope and you have faith and you're an idealist. And that's what we need, because adults, they get disappointed too many times and it sort of makes them drag around too much. So we need the kids' perspective. And, you know, I grew up with that feeling of raise your hand in the classroom, speak out when you can. And if somebody doesn't like it, say, well, I'm sorry, you know, I respect your opinion. Please respect mine.
Wow.
But, you know, you're not fighting. You're not trying to win. It's not a question of winning.
Yeah.
It's definitely a question of respecting, though. And Habibi, by the way, and The Turtle of Oman were both turned into plays. Habibi by a playwright in Texas named Paul Bonin Rodriguez, and The Turtle of Oman by a playwright in North Carolina named Jonathan Ray. And I have to say, to see these books on the stage with characters like saying words that I had written, that was one of the most mind-blowing experiences of my life.
Wow.
I cried every time I saw The Turtle of Oman. I saw it 7 times. I cried every single time. And I knew what was coming. I knew what was going to happen. It's crazy.
I'm curious about projects like Castaway. These types of collections, do you decide, okay, I'm starting a new collection? Or do you just kind of press pause and look in the sort of rear view mirror and say, oh, these 20 songs make an album?
Well, that's a great question. And, it's kind of both. I mean, you're working for a long time, and then suddenly one day something bing in your mind, and you think, I think I want to gather these together. Or I think it actually may have been my beloved editor, Virginia, who said, you have such an obsession with trash and collecting trash wherever you are. I know the writer David Sedaris has that obsession too. But I'd had it all my life since childhood too. And Virginia said, do you write about it? I said, yeah, of course. I write about things I find. And she said, well, think about it. So that probably got me thinking about it. I did have the most fun writing Castaway that I think I've ever had with any book. This book really made me laugh when I was putting it together. And I'm very excited that's been adopted by a bunch of environmental style programs, cool. Trash pickup youth programs. But like right now, because my mom died on American Thanksgiving, I am really working on new poems that are all mom connected. And of course, during her last 7 months, we had her here in our house with us. We were caring for her, and I was copying down lots of things that she said during that time. And she's always been such an intriguing character to me too, because when I was a child, she said, don't write about me. You can write about your dad because he doesn't mind, but I don't want to be written about. So I was very respectful of that. And I didn't write about her a lot, except secretly in my notebooks.
Yeah.
But then as she got older, she kind of wanted to be written about. I think she wanted to appear in books and things. So I told her that I was writing down things she said. She liked that. And she was a truly amazing mom, a strong, strong person who affected lots of people's lives. And she was always open-minded, Mikey. And that is such a lucky thing to have 2 open-minded parents.
To move from Missouri to Palestine in 1966 is
and then Texas. And she was a great person. She loved art. She went to art school, and she exposed me to the world of art, taking us to the museum every Sunday that she could. So I'm working on that now. And I do feel that it's very deliberate. Like every day I sit down and write about moms. And not only my mom either, but other people's moms. Because many people have written me letters in which they say something about my mom that they remember that mattered to them, but they also talk about their own mom. And, I think that when we go through these really tough experiences in life, and by the way, my condolences to all the people worldwide who have lost family members to COVID. And, there's been such a profound sense of life as a precious and transitory thing these past few years. My heart goes out to you, and we've all felt more fragile than usual, and we're all together in our sense.
And more connected.
Yeah, we're more connected, right?
Well, I'm really sorry for your loss, and but thank you for sharing.
So much, Mikey.
My
mom, by the way, she would have loved your questions. She would have said,
very, very sweet.
He's wonderful. Talk to him forever.
That's very, very sweet of you to say. I want to ask you about 2 projects that you already mentioned, the Turtle of Oman, but I'm really excited because you are coming on our book club series, which is fantastic, in May. And we are going to discuss the Turtle of Oman as well as the newly published Turtle of Michigan. So tell us a little bit about this project and why you felt the need to do a sequel, essentially?
Well, it was believing in the kids that I wrote the Turtle of Oman for, because they really pressed me. And especially the kids of North Carolina, where the book, The Turtle of Oman, was adopted for a wonderful program called Little Read, where hundreds of kids are given the same book. Every year this happens. And so they were given the Turtle of Oman. And I went over to North Carolina, and that's where the play was being presented to all these different groups of kids. And they were such beautiful kids. They had done so many projects devoted to their own study of Oman and the Middle East. One bunch of third graders had been eating food cooked from Omani recipes for weeks and months already when I got there. And it was just incredible. All the beautiful teachers, they were so into it. And so these kids all had one real pressure point in their questions and answers at the ends of all my sessions. And there were many sessions for many days. We need to know what happens. This boy is on the brink of leaving to the United States. Then what? You can't just leave us there. Yeah. And this sort of was across the boards. This was their demand. And so in front of them, finally, when I had about the 20th group say to me, you really need to write another book that follows him and tells us what happens when he gets to Michigan. So that's why I did it. I made the promise from the stage. And I hadn't even, talked to my editor yet. Do you want to publish this? But it was a lot of fun to work on it. And by the way, I already knew the characters because they were the same characters from the Turtle of Oman, except for the new people that he was meeting in Michigan, the main character, Amr. And I have the question, has the Turtle of Oman been translated into Arabic? Right now, it is being translated into Arabic and is going to come out in Muscat, which makes me so happy.
So cool.
Yeah.
So did you have less hesitation or less sort of trepidation about, can I write this long story now that you're revisiting the same characters? Where you're like, I could totally do this?
Well, writers often say that their characters tell them what they want to do. Yeah. And certain things happened in The Turtle of Michigan, especially with Sidi, the grandfather character, which I didn't know about at the beginning. I had no idea what he was going to do in the book until I was writing it. And so I was following the boy, and I felt like I knew his spirit. I really liked him. And the grandfather, though, from the first book was my beloved favorite character. And I do think he's based on my dad a little bit. But I don't know. I was surprised. I was open to surprise. And I based the book, this one, I sent the boy to a school in Ann Arbor, Michigan that I have actually worked at twice, Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary. It's a beautiful school in Ann Arbor, very multicultural school. So I knew what it looked like. I knew what the kids were like there, and I could, genuinely place him there, send him there. Yeah. And and a lot of kids have told me that they related to the Turtle of Oman, even if they had never moved from country to country or even city to city. They said, every year, and this was something I hadn't really thought about, every year when we have to leave our grade that we're in, like to move from second grade to third grade, that's traumatic. We have to leave our teachers. We're so close to our teachers by now. We have to say goodbye. So they often related to the boys' fear of change in the Turtle of Oman in a way that was much broader and deeper than I could have anticipated. That was very touching to me.
Amazing. Okay, we're going to do the quick Q&A, and then we're going to open up for the audience. So let's, what are you reading or watching right now?
Well, I'm reading a brand new book by my dear friend Steve Harrigan, a Texas writer, called The Leopard is Loose. And it's based on a boy's experience growing up in Oklahoma. The book is starting out in Oklahoma, where a leopard actually escapes from the city zoo. And this happened when Steve was a boy. So it's a brand new book, and I'm excited to read it because I have no idea what's going to happen in the book. And watching my husband, who, by the way, is also called Mikey, ever since his grandfather, he goes by Mikey. My husband and I are obsessed with Midnight Diner from Tokyo. We have fallen in love with this. Have you seen it, Mikey?
No, but I'm going to change that this weekend.
Yeah, we love it. We are in season 2 now, and we're very excited just to keep watching it. And I would say to those of you who watch it, get ready to kind of mimic some of those dishes in your kitchen too. It is beautiful. Oh, somebody else wrote Midnight Diner. It is beautiful. The spirit in it, the master. He's like a dream teacher, a friend. He's beautiful. Yeah.
Cool.
But I'm always reading poetry. I have so many books of poetry surrounding me. I'm in a sea of poetry at all times.
Okay, that's a good sea to be in.
Yeah.
Okay, who would you love to shadow for a day, past or present?
Shadow for a day. So many people, but I'm very touched by musicians and visual artists. And I was just reading something about the African-American painter Faith Ringgold, whose children's books I've always loved. I would love to shadow Faith Ringgold. Her studio, and I think she lives in New York City. I have shared one of her books called Tar Beach so many times with kids. And she loves quilts. I believe she was a quilt maker also, which I was when I was a kid, young, growing up. I would love to just follow her around and be around her colors for a day.
Do you feel like you're the same person around a group of like 20 kids as you are with a group of sort of 26-year-olds and 60-year-olds? You're the same exact person?
No, I think we're all many different people. And I think the group you're with brings out different qualities in you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And that child self that's inside all of us forever, I believe, it has an opportunity to come out more when we're with kids.
Great. Okay, what do people most misunderstand about your work, or maybe your line of work? Either one.
Well, I question the word career really as it applies to poets. I think of poetry as a devotion, a vocation, a calling, a passion, but I don't really think of it as a career. And, I just would say that, you work out of love. So it's not a question of your next career move. And occasionally I've visited a school here or there where, the teacher told you in advance they want you to talk about all the best career moves for poets. And I said, well, I don't think I could really do that, but I could talk about going outside and looking at a tree and being with that tree and feeling the tree. So, I think for poetry, it's kind of a different set of soul presence questions. It's not a question of a career.
Yeah. Do you remember the Broadway show Chorus Line?
Yes, sure.
Do you remember that song sung by something Rodriguez, where she's talking about feel the snowflake?
Yeah, right.
Feel the table. It's like that.
Yeah. Well, if we're here in Texas, we hope not to feel the snowflake this year. But no, you do have to feel with a lot of things, and you have to, be ready to, be open to. You want to. Yeah.
Okay, last question before we open it up is, outside of your profession, whose work do you admire or are inspired by? I'm sure the list is really long, but if you want to give a shout out to somebody that folks should check out.
It's so huge. The list is so long, but I love jazz. I love the blues. I love musicians. I'm going to say my friend Simone Shaheen, the Palestinian great musician. We have had a chance this past year to do a number of events together with Simone playing and his incredible music, whether oud or violin or something else.
Desperately want to interview Simone. So
I love Simone's music. I love his passion. And he said a line this year that really stays with me. Naomi, we are one in the arts. And I really love that line because I think all artists are one. And as you know, Simone had a hard year because he lost two of his very beloved musical collaborators to COVID. Yeah. And I just admire what a teacher he's been to so many people. And and how beautiful he is in his work. But there are so many other people I could have named, but Simone is in my heart, especially being with you and with our particular audience today.
Okay, let's open it up. The first question comes from Marianne. Marianne, if you want to unmute yourself, go for it.
Hello there from
Hey.
Seattle. How are you?
Great.
Hi, Marianne. I'm so happy to hear your beautiful voice.
It's great to see you, dear. I miss seeing you. I can't even imagine this because you're such a Pied Piper of kindness and compassion in your work. But have you ever been heckled?
Yes, I have. And, I try to remember my dad, who, if heckled, he would say something like, my friend, I think you need a little more information, or I have a lot of questions I'd like to ask you. He would say something that would kind of turn the perspective. So, I'm not trying to beat you in an argument. I had a funny experience once. I think I was in Ohio, and someone who was standing in a doorway at the back of an audience at a college started shouting out and heckling me in some way. I couldn't even understand what he was saying. And the crazy thing that happened was an artist, a musician that I know from San Antonio, Texas, where I live. He lives right down the street. He actually got up and jumped on this guy and kind of took him out of the room. And I said afterwards, George, where did you come from? What are you doing in Ohio? And he said, well, like you, I travel for my work. And I was so surprised that this happened and so grateful. And I was laughing, thinking, that's the last person I would dream of being defended by in another state. But, I don't even know. There's been other heckling, but I never hold it to me. Somebody said to me a couple of years ago, how do you feel when you read mean comments on the internet about you or your work? And I said, that's an easy question to answer. I never read comments. I don't read positive or negative comments. So I don't know what anyone says. I don't really think that's what we should do. I think it would make people too self-conscious. So I just would try to find some way to ease the awkwardness, whatever it might be.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marianne. That's a great question.
And Marianne, by the way, is a great Arab American artist whom I love.
Absolutely.
Look up her work.
Thank you, dear. I'll talk to you
And this
soon.
is a funny thing that we're looking down at here. It says that my son's name is Madison White Cloud. Actually, it's Madison Cloud Feather. I don't think I would have put white in somebody's name.
Oh, interesting. So this is wrong. I apologize.
No, that's okay.
Okay, so let's have Mariam, you're up next. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hi, Mariam.
Hi. I hope you're doing great. It was a pleasure listening to you. My question is, I'm from Lahore, Pakistan. What is the least inspiring thing that happened that you put in your poem? Yeah, the least inspiring thing. How do you convert those things into your poetic lens?
Ah, interesting. Least inspiring. Well, I think sometimes fear is not too inspiring because we get caught, we get stuck in fear or doubt sometimes. I mean, I think doubt is interesting, but fear, where we're like afraid to do something, and sometimes we do have to write to move through that. And by the way, I love your city, Lahore, Pakistan. I have worked there in my life. I was very moved to be there. Kishwar Nahid was one of my friends there, and I really respected her work there. And my mother's name, by the way, was Miriam. So Mariam is a beautiful name to me.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you for your question.
It's a pleasure.
And that is such an interesting question.
Thanks, Mariam.
Thank you. I also write poetry. Thanks.
I wish you a lot of subjects and most interesting things, not least interesting things. Also, I would say least interesting is closed-mindedness. Someone who wants to say that they're right, but nobody else is right, that's not very interesting.
Okay, great. Sada wants me to read her question. Could you share more about your writing process? Do you do it in one sitting, or do you go back and edit and do rewrites? And how does that impact the authenticity of the emotion in what you're writing and the rawness?
Sure, that's a great question. Yeah, I still like to write by hand in notebooks, like pen or pencil. I like it to be messy sometimes. I like to write up the page, stick words in. I really like that physical experience of writing. And yes, definitely, I go back to it many times. And I don't think that we dilute the experience, the emotion of a piece of writing or a piece of art or music, whatever you're creating, by going back to it. We're just bringing another perspective to it, another self. I mean, it's not like at the moment you're writing, you're a true person, and then tomorrow you're going to be a false person. No, you'll just be a true person on another day, coming back with your new experience and your, maybe a little bit more distance to apply to that work. Like today, I'm writing down some things from the past week that I just hadn't had a chance to write down. Some comments my grandson made when we were on a walk, some funny things, some thoughts I had about my mom that may grow into mom poems, but I wasn't really, doing a lot with them. I was just recording a lot of details. But when I go back and start trying to compose something, then I will be getting into more of an editing process, trying to build a poem, bring in little bits and pieces, create a scene, bring in voices, and then sure, I'll go back and edit it many times. I love revision. Always remember, revision means new vision, revision. So it's not like you're tampering with your pure work. It's like you're just working on your work. And I see a question up there about what advice can you give novice writers? My mentor, William Stafford, used to say, for writers, there are 3 basic ways: morning, noon, and night. Like write a lot, write at different times of the day. And also I had a class in college where our teacher was a playwright. It was a class on creating many different genres. And he always said, try to be kind to yourself. Don't be a difficult censor for yourself, saying, no, you shouldn't be saying that. No, that's probably no good. Be kind to yourself. Welcome your own perception as it comes to you. Because if you don't, who will?
That's true. Naomi, I could listen to you all day. This is so sweet of you to do this and share your nuggets of wisdom and joy with us. It's a real pleasure.
Mikey, thank you for your time. It's such an honor to be with you. You're my favorite interviewer ever.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The talk will go up on our podcast tomorrow and on our YouTube page. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so. Share them with your friends. They'll like it. They'll like you. Yeah, that's it. Tomorrow we have another event. I take it back. Monday we have an event, which is one of our quarter tone series, and it's with the great Ivan Sandrof. It should be a lot of fun. So be well, enjoy your weekend. I hope you are warm and safe. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.